I'm Jonas Vingegaard, and welcome to the Cycling Dane.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another tier list here on the Cycling Dane. And today we're going to be looking through the World Tour team's performance as a whole for the season. Obviously, the season finished with Il Lombardia in terms of the World Tour, but there are still a few minor races, Paris Tours. But today I'm joined with Patrick from Outdo Cycling, and great to have you here, Patrick. And yeah, we might as well jump into it. Another tier list. And our first team is Astana. 4 victory this year. Well, if you count national championships, road race, and the individual time trial for Kazakhstan, stage 4 of the Tour of the Alps with Miguel Angel Lopez, and also a race win with Alexei Lutsenko in Spain. But crucially, I think the highlights of their season has been a 4th place in the Giro with Nibali, which was quite surprising. And then Lopez 4th as well in the Vuelta, and then 8th with Lutsenko in the Tour de France. How have you kind of judged their season as a whole? They got Gianni Moscon coming in. He basically did nothing this year. What have you thought of Astana, and where should we put in our beautiful category box here?
I think it's quite easy to perhaps scrutinise Astana. I think, there's been a lot of controversy around them, including like they haven't paid riders or something else. That was a whole thing at the start of the year. But I think they've actually done quite well when you consider that they, like you say, 2 4th places in Grand Tours and an 8th place as well. It's very respectable, and quietly they've got on with their business, and I think have probably exceeded what I thought they would do for this season, even though, like you say, Moscon didn't really do anything. For me, I would put them in satisfied. I think that as a team which has had Grand Tour credentials in the past, I think that finishing inside the top 10 of all 3 of the Grand Tours is a very strong performance. So, yeah, satisfied.
So no heated debates there. We're quite agree on that front. But yeah, moving on to a team we'll probably also be agreeing on. Lotto Soudal this year have not really been forced. Well, 25 victories. People forget that as well. Many of them coming from the neo-pro Arnaud Delis, who's absolutely been incredible, you must say. And yeah, Caleb Ewan also taking a few victories, but not at the level that we were expecting. I'm not even sure they got a Grand Tour stage win in the Giro with Thomas de Gent, but other than that, win the overall at the Saudi Tour, overall at the 4 days of Dunkirk. Where should we kind of put them? They're also in the relegation, or I think they're going to be one of the teams relegated as well if the system goes ahead.
I would probably put them in meh, just because I think that there's been some really good performances, especially from Arnaud Delis. I think that he has really carried this team, and honestly, in my opinion, he's probably one of the riders of the season because of how well he's been doing there. But like you say, aside from the De Gent kind of lot, like the stage win in the Giro, I'm not seeing many like big highlights, especially like Caleb Ewan was quite disappointing. He seemed to kind of build his whole season around Milan San Remo, and then nothing really came of it because I think he got like COVID or something like that. And I think that, he just, specifically Caleb Ewan, for such kind of a star man of that team, really needed to be doing more. So that's why I'm probably thinking it's a bit meh, just because we didn't get big victories.
Yeah, they actually had more wins this year than last year, courtesy of Arnaud Delis, obviously. But so that's quite interesting. Obviously, the Caliber wins were a bit higher, and most of them were on the World Tour last year. But yeah, so we agree with them. Next, moving on to a team that always brings a bit of a debate, Israel Premier Tech. So Israel Premier Tech, 15 victories this year. They are the other team also we think is going to be relegated. The best result, really, Jakob Fuglsang finishing 3rd in the Tour de Suisse, winning the Tour of Turkey as well, 2nd in the Arctic Race of Norway, obviously taking a victory, 2 victories even, with Simon Clark and Ugo Ull in the Tour de France. So, Patrick, how do you think the season has gone as a whole?
It's definitely been a bit of a strange season for Israel, because they brought in lots of kind of older riders who perhaps haven't lived up to their expectations, but there's some real flashes of form, including the 2 Tour de France stage wins, both of which weren't just the kind of Tour de France stages which are forgotten about. They were very memorable in terms of kind of why they were important for the riders. And I think there's definitely been some strong individual performances. But yeah, Israel, for me, it's between satisfied and meh, just because I think that I was expecting more from some of their higher caliber riders. but they didn't really get any kind of big victories, but the ones which they did get, like the ones in the Tour, I think were very good. So if I was them, I mean, for me, I'd probably say meh, but what do you reckon?
That seems so mean, having Tour stage wins, 2 Tour stage wins, but yeah, I completely get where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, you choose. The 2 Tour stage wins are pretty good.
Yeah, and the Simon Clark story, and yeah, obviously World as well. But they're not going to be satisfied because they're going to get relegated. So, meh.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of meh, Bahrain Victorious, that was arguably the team of the season last year. They've definitely not lived up to that hype this year. Though, that said, a win in Milan San Remo, winning Flèche Wallonne with Dylan Teuns, who's not in the team anymore, 3rd and 5th at the Giro d'Italia, and 13th in the Tour de France by Luis Leon Sanchez, and 2nd in Tour de Romandie. So plenty of good stuff in there, but it's just not building on last year when they had such an exceptional season.
It's strange to think that, yeah, with Bahrain, that compared to last year, somehow we are a bit unsatisfied with their performance, despite the fact that they've done such great things, including podiuming a Grand Tour and like winning La Flèche Wallonne and also the Milano San Remo, but yet somehow we seem a little bit kind of like this is under par. For me, I would definitely say that considering when you compare them to last year, I would probably put them at the minimum of satisfied. It could venture into very good because of some of the performances, but I'm not sure if that's just because I'm comparing it to last year that makes me think that perhaps it's not quite as good as perhaps we think it should be.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So we'll go for satisfied. Next, moving on to a team that's probably a bit more than satisfied, Quickstep Alpha Vinyl, winning their first ever Grand Tour with a certain Remco Evenepoel and looking absolutely scintillating, not taking them the success that they wanted in the Tour de France, ultimately winning the green jersey for a 3rd year in a row, but 47 victories, which is down from last year, but it's certainly does trump it in some respect that they have got yet again the world champion, but winning their first ever Grand Tour, winning Liège-Bastogne-Liège again with Remco, Classica San Sebastian, Remco again, Belgian Tour, Tour of Norway, Vuelta Algarve. It's just crazy, this result list, courtesy of Remco, and Fabio Jakobsen getting a lot of big victories as well. So I'm going to put them in legendary, and then you can argue them down.
I think, yeah, I can understand why it's in legendary because of all of what like Evenepoel's done, but I'm taking it as like a whole team dynamic. If you took like, you know, if it wasn't for Evenepoel, where would this team be? And overall, it's kind of Evenepoel's really carried this team. There have been some other good things like Lampard winning the opening TT of the Tour, a really cool moment and like very emotional for Lampard as well. Jakobsen, of course, won a stage, I think it was the day after. So there's definitely been some really good moments, and you know what? Yeah, Evenepoel winning all those one-day races and the World Championships and the Vuelta, it's kind of hard to talk it down from legendary when you consider that they have probably got some of the best results from the year. So I want to try and argue it down, but honestly, I do agree with you. I think it is probably legendary.
Well, I'll have to put them there. It just seems cruel not to. Moving on to Team DSM, and yeah, this is a team with mixed fortunes, you would say. Romain Bardet, their leading man still to some respect. They are losing Tiemann Arensman this year, who did very well at the Giro d'Italia. Also took a Vuelta a España stage win for them, finishing 6th overall in the Vuelta and 6th in the Tour de France. It looked like they were going to be challenging for the top step in terms of the Giro d'Italia, but Romain Bardet ultimately didn't do it. But he did win the Tour of the Alps. So how have you found Team DSM this year? As a unit, 10 victories overall as well.
DSM is definitely a team which focuses a lot on their youth development, which perhaps means that they don't get the high caliber results which they perhaps should do because they don't have such a wide variety of like top end talent. But I'd say that it's a satisfying season for them just because Bardet did get some good GC results. Arensman was a nice breakthrough rider, but they also had some good things like Dainese won a stage for Giro, so they've got that Grand Tour stage as well, which is always a good sign, like a good kind of yardstick for a team to use as a measurement for how good a season's been. I'd say that given the riders which they have, it's a satisfying season. I don't think it could venture into very good because it kind of hasn't been. So satisfied seems like a very sensible place to be putting them.
They have had also top results in some of the one-day races. Milan San Remo 7th, Lombardia 9th, 3rd at Scheldeprijs. So there are good results. But yeah, I think you're right. But yeah, moving on to a team that we're probably not going to be too nice about. Cofidis, Girmay obviously being the big star, 19 victories this year, but only 2 World Tour stage victories. One of them, Ion Izagirre, on stage 6 of the Basque Country, where she also finished second in. And quite surprisingly, Simon Geschke was third in the Tour de Romandie, but their only Grand Tour stage win came from Jesus Herrada. No Tour de France stage victories and no Giro d'Italia stage victories either. So how you found their season? I mean, 2 victories in the 2.1 French stage race is pretty good as well.
It's been an okay season for them, but I do look at some of their riders and I do think that I was perhaps expecting a bit more, like Coquard and Guillaume Martin and Simone Consonni. They've got a lot of talent there. They've also had a nice breakthrough rider in like Alex Zongel, who's had a really good season as well. The young Frenchman, he's only 23 or so. So I would probably say it's a meh season personally. I think that there's been, on the French scene, they've been very good, which is, of course, a big kind of focus for them as when you consider that they're not a big team. So in comparison to the budget and the quality of riders they've have, I think that it's probably meh. I would have expected a couple more like little kind of gems in there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Moving on to the Netflix stars, Movistar, no pun intended there. This is going to be the final year of Alejandro Valverde, we believe. They brought in Ivan Sosa. It looked like he was going to be, well, amazing, but it didn't quite happen. They got 17 victories this year, which is actually 2 victories up from last year where they only got 15. Plenty of good stuff in here, to say the least. Second in Vuelta a España with Enric Mas. He also finished second in Il Lombardia. Obviously, we covered that together. They won the Tour of Britain, which was stopped after a certain monarch died. Flèche Wallonne, Alejandro Valverde was second. Alejandro Valverde was second in Strade Bianche as well. And the Grand Piemonte was won by Ivan Garcia Cortina, but I won't say the other one because you can fill us in on that. And yeah, how have you felt that Movistar's season has gone this year?
It's been good to an extent, but they didn't do good in the Tour, let's face it. That wasn't really on their radar. Mas didn't perform there, but then he, of course, did bounce back and do good in the Vuelta, which is really good. But at the same time, the Tour is the kind of pinnacle of our sport, and not doing well there does kind of hamper my view on their success in this season. So I would probably say satisfied, because they did have a good kind of end, with Mas doing well at Il Lombardia and also Giro dell'Emilia, where he won Emilia. But I think that for a team that's usually renowned for being really consistent in Grand Tours, the fact that they only top 10 one of them is a little bit unsatisfactory. So I'm going to, think that smack bang in the middle of satisfied.
And just to compare it, last year we actually put them in satisfied as well. So another satisfied season for Movistar. But yeah, moving on to Team Bike Exchange, which I've largely not been too motivated about this year. The Australian outfit, spearheaded by Simon Yates, who did manage to take a stage victory, actually 2, a time trial stage and a solo effort in the Giro d'Italia. Michael Matthews being up there in the Tour de France, taking a stage win, and Dylan Groenewegen taking a stage win as well. The new signing, Simon Yates second in Paris-Nice, Michael Matthews fourth in Milan-San Remo. There are a number of good results here, even a stage win in the Vuelta a España.
I think that the stage wins in the Grand Tours is definitely going to be improving my judgment. I'd say it's hard because the downfall is that Simon Yates, that is, didn't really do the GC results that we were expecting of him. Of course, I think he was he out of the Vuelta with COVID, I think it was, and he left the Giro because I can't remember what it was, but he kind of left there as well. But we did get Grand Tour stage wins in every Grand Tour, which, let's face it, not many teams are capable of doing that. So I'm somewhere between satisfied and good. So I might just let you decide.
Since we have no one in very good, I'll put it in there.
Yeah.
Someone needs to be there. Yeah, moving on to AG2R Citroën, who were a very good team last year by winning stages in all 3 Grand Tours. This year, 11 victories. Benoit Cosnefroid taking their latest victory in GB Quebec. Patrick, how you found this? A victory with Bob Jungels as well in the Tour de France. He also managed to finish 11th.
It has been a little bit under par for me. I know that there's been some good flashes with Quebec, with Cosnefroid, and also Jungels' stage win. Cosnefroid, oh, he was so close to winning Amstel. And you know what? That might be the deciding factor, honestly, for how I choose kind of where I think we're going to go. O'Connor, yes, he's been unlucky. His kind of GC ambitions have been fairly consistent throughout kind of stage races, but the Grand Tours haven't been particularly kind of worthy of note in comparison to last year where he finished fourth in the Tour, which was just a really, really strong performance. So it's a meh or a satisfied for me. I would say probably for me, because they got a stage win in the Tour as a French team, I'm going to go with satisfied. I think that's going to mean quite a lot to them. And Cosnefroid getting a big result in Quebec is also very good.
That was actually where they were last year as well. So another repeat offender. Yeah, moving on to a team that is called Jumbo Visma. What is there not to say if you're a Danish fan? Wout van Aert and Jonas Vingegaard, even Primož Roglic, spearheading the results of this team. 48 victories, and Laporte, absolutely incredible. Winning the Criterium du Dauphiné, winning Paris-Nice, both with Roglic, winning the Omloop Het Nieuwsblad with Wout van Aert, the E3 Saxo Bank Classic as well with Wout van Aert, and he ultimately finished second in Paris-Roubaix. The list is incredible here, and yeah, Laporte even won Tour of Denmark, which I never thought a sprinter would do. I'm going to say legendary again, and then you can argue me down from legendary.
I think, yeah, Jumbo have been really good. Just absolutely sensational in so many departments, even like when you consider that they've got some like the young rider like Olav Koy who's coming in, who just seems to be cementing their future. As I'd say that, yeah, Roglic as a whole has been quite underwhelming this year. I know that he did win like the Dauphiné and he also won Paris-Nice, but at the end of the day he is here and paid the big money to try and do well in Grand Tours, and yet another Tour de France has gone by where he has underperformed, so kind of reduces my opinion of that kind of aspect of Jumbo Visma a bit. But Vingegaard was just kind of more than up to the task of kind of taking up the reins as the GC leader. Wout van Aert's just been sensational. I would say the only thing with Wout van Aert, he is still lacking that big kind of one-day race result, the Milan-San Remo, the Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
He has won Milan-San Remo.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, well, sorry, I mean this year. He didn't win one this year. But would be the only tiny caveat that I have against Wout van Aert. But I'd say legendary is probably the only place that Jumbo Visma can be.
Yeah, that Tour de France performance, winning all the jerseys apart from the white one, is spectacular.
Insane.
Yeah, moving on to, well, we agree with this. We could spend a whole show on just talking about Jumbo Visma, but we do have the Tour de France tier list as well. So if you want to hear specifically about the Tour de France, make sure to check that out. Groupama-FDJ is our next team. David Gaudu finishing fourth in the Tour de France seemed like a huge result, to be honest. What have you thought of their season?
I've really liked Groupama this year, and I think that some of their riders have really stepped it up a level, including namely, I think Rudy Mallard's done really good, especially in these latter Italian races. I think Quentin Pacher's really stepped up as well, and also Valentin Madouas, who's probably one of my favourite riders, have all been really good, especially when you consider that Madouas, when you take into consideration that Quintana got wiped out of the top 10 of the Tour, Madouas also finished inside the top 10 of the Tour de France, which is huge for a French team to get two riders inside the top 10, and also, you know, Gaudu finishing fourth. Yeah, very good season for Groupama. They won't be able to get into legendary because they haven't had one of those massive results, a big kind of one-day result or something like that. But Kung was very good in the Copper Classics, it's worth noting as well. He did really good in a lot of those, like Dwars d'Ors and like Roubaix. I think he finished on the podium of there as well. So a very, very good season from Groupama, and hopefully we'll see something more from them next year. But bringing in a lot of youngsters, and I'm really excited to see what's going to kind of come of that.
Moving swiftly on to Trek-Segafredo, obviously because it's their latest result, I think the Mas Pilsen really sticks out for me. 3 stage victories in the Vuelta a España, winning the stage 13 of the Tour de France as well. So 4 stage victories in Grand Tours from just Mas Pilsen, and on top of that, Skjelmose winning, yeah, it's not a World Tour race, but the Tour of Luxembourg, and Juan Pedro Lopez ultimately not winning the Giro, but having a good stint in the Maglia Rosa and finishing 10th overall. How have you thought Trek-Segafredo have fared as a team? Last year, we put them in satisfied.
It's definitely not going to go worse than satisfied because they've had some just great performances, specifically from Pedersen has really got the big results in the Grand Tour stages. Those are the big important things really for this team when you consider they're not really a team that's focused around GC really. You also have to remember that I think Ciccone won a stage off the Giro as well. So that's another important thing. That means that they won a stage of every single Grand Tour. And when you take that into consideration, the other team that we put in very good for that was Bike Exchange. So I think that it only seems fair to put Trek in very good as well because they basically fulfilled a very similar feat. You reckon that seems about fair?
Yep. Completely. Speaking of very good, that is where our next team was last year as well. Last year they had the Tour de France victory, 2 monument victories. This year they've got 46 victories in total. Absolutely phenomenal. Second in the Tour de France, we know, winning Il Lombardia, winning Tirreno Adriatico, winning the UAE Tour, getting the young Juan Ayuso onto the podium, adding the Strade Bianche onto the list of victories that they've taken, and winning GP Montreal. How have you thought their season have fared? I was a bit, well, not sad. Well, I was sad, but I wasn't disappointed because it wasn't his fault. Joao Almeida, if he had potentially gotten a podium or won the Giro d'Italia, I would have put them in very well. I think they should go in very good, but the low echelons are very good.
Very good will probably be where they end up just because of Pogacar didn't win the Tour. I think that's kind of the main deciding factor here. If he had won the Tour, I reckon I would probably be arguing that they should be in legendary, but so many good performances across the board, especially in like one-day races, GC results. Juan Ayuso was just sensational. That was amazing for such a young rider to finish on the podium there. You could argue that perhaps they don't have the kind of strength across the board. Some of their like sprinters and stuff haven't quite lived up to a mark. Again, kind of similar to Quickstep, where they have become kind of, a lot of their results came from Evenepoel, a lot of UAE's come from Pogacar, but that's just the way that things go. But I'd say that because they haven't won a Grand Tour, very good. They must remain in there.
Fair. Moving on to EF Education-EasyPost. Not as many victories as last year where they had 16. Did, however, win a stage in the Tour de France with Magnus Cort Nielsen. They also won a stage at the Vuelta a España with Rigoberto Urán, 9th at the Giro and 9th at the Vuelta a España. Can they be happy about this result?
Yeah, I think they can be, especially since a lot of what they were aiming for this year was trying to avoid relegation. And of course, they have succeeded in doing that. And also alongside doing that, they've thrived in the aspect of winning some Grand Tour stages. Of course, I think their GC results have been quite good. The likes of Hugh Carthy and Chavez, I was really expecting to do a bit more. But I think that because of that lack of GC results, I'd probably say satisfied is a good place to put them. However, I think that, they're going to need to try and do something a bit better in the next season.
Moving on to Bora-Hansgrohe, which has really been one of the breath of fresh airs in terms of teams, winning the Giro d'Italia, which is obviously the biggest result. Vlasov finishing 5th in the Tour de France. I'm going to say very good, and then you can argue with me if you disagree with that. Or do you think they should go higher?
I think it's possible they could go into legendary, because it's not every day that you win a Grand Tour. And, it's a really big feat that they've done that. And they also won stages along the way. Leonard Kemner has been quite easily overlooked. Sometimes he's been the new kind of breakaway artist, so to say. And Vlasov, he won the Tour of Romandy as well. He also did very well at La Flèche Wallonne and kind of become quite versatile in that sense. Higuita won Catalonia and also did pretty well at Lombardia. So I'm going to stick with that and say, yeah, legendary.
Yeah, we need some more teams up there. But speaking of legendary seasons, Intermarché-Wanty Gobert have definitely stepped it up this year. Girmay obviously taking headlines for his Giro win, his Ghent-Wevelgem, but they've also had a top 10 in the Giro d'Italia with other stage wins, courtesy of Jan Hurt. And last year we gave them satisfied, but yeah, I think very good at least should be what they're getting. Kristoff in top 10 in terms of top World Tour point scoring riders. So
I think, yeah, very good. Makes a lot of sense. Yes, I've had some very good results, including like Grand Tour stages and stuff. But I think that to really enter the realm of legendary, you have to be winning a Grand Tour, or you have to kind of bolster that with lots of other results. So I think that Intermarché have been absolutely one of the best teams of the season, but I don't think they can go into legendary because they haven't had a big GC result.
Moving into to our last team, third in the Tour de France with Geraint Thomas, second in the Giro d'Italia with Richard Carapaz, and winning Paris-Roubaix. That is their biggest results, and then Amstel Gold as well. So where would you put them?
I'm going to argue that they should go in legendary, because I know that they didn't do very well at the Vuelta, but when you consider that Bernal was out this year, it's very possible that they could have done that if he was in health. Winning a monument, winning Amstel, also they finished on the podium of Flanders, just some really strong one-day performances as well as GC results. I think that really provides the whole complement of a team that should belong in the legendary kind of status.
I think that is a very fair assessment. So there you have it. There is our 2022 World Tour ranking, and make sure to comment down below what you've thought of our ranking. Is there any you disagree with? We have no one in the poor category. We had FDJ last year. And as always, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out Patrick on I'll Do Cycling, link down below. And of course, as always, have a nice day, and we will see you around.
For sure, it's not normal to be a good climber in Denmark, but I think it's basically because of my low weight. So I think that's actually what it does.